any of these deals that you saw, I just mentioned, shock you today?
Nothing really shocked me, but the one that obviously sticks out, especially for people who are following the Toronto Blue Jays, is the Justin Verlander deal, because the Blue Jays were, to some degree, engaged in that conversation. And it's interesting, I think, that they were playing in that kind of level, because seeing where the dollars landed, the Blue Jays would have had to have been in that kind of financial area to be in the discussion, Justin Verlander. And while it's not necessarily a direct reflection of kind of exactly how much money they have, I mean, it is indicative of some of what they can do financially this offseason. So I think as we're really trying to piece together what is plan A for the Toronto Blue Jays, what's plan B, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's an interesting little nugget of information, kind of gauge financially some of what they're working with.
I said earlier that when the Mets lost DeGrom, that pumped the number up even higher on Verlander because the Mets really wanted to replace him. But from what you're hearing, the Jays were in on this?
Yeah, they were. And look, I mean, I don't know this part for a fact, but I'm going to guess that probably there were a lot of teams who were willing to go 2 years for him, and that the Mets probably pushed it over the finish line by adding the third-year vest. I mean, that's sort of the difference maker. We just think about Verlander's age, how many miles he's got on the odometer, all those things. I think a lot of teams are going to be careful about the third year there, probably comfortable at 2, maybe a little bit wary at 3. And so I'm just guessing, again, I'm guessing on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was a bit of the difference maker there. And look, the Blue Jays tried to make a run at Verlander last offseason. By all accounts, they fared fairly well there and at least impressed him, or at least made him think about it. So logical that they would follow up again this year. I don't believe that they felt they were going to be the favorites or anything like that. But again, this is sort of the area where they're shopping, some of what they're thinking. And to me, what's intriguing is whether this was plan A, plan B, plan C, and how they respond from here. But the one thing that myself and Ben Nicholson-Smith, our colleague, have been hearing consistently over the day today, everything is Jays are all over pitching in every aspect of the market, and they were certainly at the top end, and now where do they move to from here? Okay, so we know that John Schneider is speaking at around 6:40 p.m. Eastern time, 3:40 local where you are in San Diego. Ross Atkins going at 7:30 Eastern. Do the math, 4:30 local for you. So what do you expect the Jays offseason to look like? I know we're not going to get much out of them today. I know you're going to try and get a few things out of them today. But how do you expect this offseason to go for the Jays? Yeah, I mean, we're going to try to get all the secrets. They're pretty good at guarding them.
Yes, they are.
Look, I think it's pretty clear. They're obviously getting at least one starting pitcher. I mean, I've said this all along. I do think they're going to end up getting a second or at least someone capable of starting as well, because they're not ready to commit a spot to Yusei Kikuchi in the rotation. And you just do the math, that leaves them with 3 starters right now. So that's 2 holes to fill. And they're going to get, in all likelihood, a left-handed hitting outfielder. In an ideal world, is one who plays a significant portion of the time or is fully a center fielder. How they go about that, there's still a lot of avenues, right? Because not many of the dominoes have fallen yet. And one thing that I feel, and certainly some suggestions that I've heard from others, is that the Blue Jays may need that catching market to develop to bring some clarity, because do they use one of their 3 catchers to either get an outfielder or to get a starting pitcher? And then if they do that, then that leaves them one other avenue in free agency. But I'm going to go back to the Justin Verlander thing here. If you're going to be in that $40 million area and you've got that kind of flexibility to spend, maybe at this point the Blue Jays are going to do all their work in free agency and then keep the 3 catchers. And there's certainly a case to be made for that. You can maybe even argue that might be the optimal outcome, even if you're not necessarily maybe optimizing all 3 players on the roster as a result. So there's certainly a lot of different ways the Blue Jays can still go, and the vast majority of them still remain open to them.
Okay, so earlier in the offseason, I suggested that it made no sense that the Pirates wanted to keep Bryan Reynolds. Apparently, Bryan Reynolds agrees with me and has requested a trade. Is that someone that you could see fitting in with the Jays?
I mean, from a player standpoint, for sure. But the Jays and the Pirates don't aren't necessarily a great matchup trade-wise. Even, a rival executive was kind of like looking at it and just saying, yeah, the Jays probably want to trade from catching, and Pirates have some catching prospects. So it doesn't necessarily line up in terms of what the Jays have surplus in and what the Pirates would want. And then the other thing is that you have to remember that Ben Cherington came from the Blue Jays. Steve Sanders, the AGM there, also came from the Blue Jays. They're going to do a lot of thinking similar to the Blue Jays. They may value their players fairly similar to the way the Blue Jays do. And if you're doing that, it becomes difficult to find the little bit of surplus and maybe the piece that another team is undervaluing that allows a trade to happen, or is typically a key ingredient in trades. When you have front offices that think too much alike, that can be a really difficult combination, Rick. So, I do think Bryan Reynolds makes a ton of sense for the Blue Jays, quite obviously from a player profile standpoint, but it just seems to me that may be a bit of a complicated deal to make unless they're able to pull in a third team to help pull everything together there.
All right, we got about 2 minutes left here, and I want to get 2 quick questions in here. Where does your gut and the word around the street tell you that Aaron Judge is going to be when this is all said and done, and how quick do you think it'll be?
It's interesting. So the word is that he's going to be arriving here tomorrow, be quite the gong show. And then you figure that is getting to the end game. And, at least with some portion of the free agent market, that's holding things up. So I'm sure that the Yankees and the San Francisco Giants and any other suitors for him probably eager for this to get resolved fairly soon. So maybe it happens here. I don't know. I would think that if it was going to happen to the Yankees, if he's going to return to the Yankees, that would have been done already. So we'll see whether that turns out or not. I mean, maybe the Giants, as one of their executives here lurking in the background here, trying to do a run, and we'll see if they're able to get that done. I think that's going to be really interesting. But I wonder if the fact that he's not done yet, if that suggests that maybe that's something that's going to change.
You can get him to run by just saying, do you want to come on national TV right now?
Yeah.
We can ask you this question. Last one, should Jays fans be Googling Kodai Sanga if they haven't already?
There's legitimate interest, and I've been hearing his name not just for this season, but in years past too. He's definitely someone that has been on their radar, on the radar of a lot of major league teams for a number of years. So I do think that the Jays have expressed interest in him. The Jays have been on that. They've scouted him heavily. So they're going to be involved. Are they going to get him? I mean, we'll see. He's going to have a very interesting market, but he's the type of guy who could potentially come in at a bit more of an affordable number and potentially give you an upper end type of talent. There's certainly some risk there if he doesn't transfer exactly like he was in Japan, but the ability is certainly intriguing.